everyone. Welcome to Be Our Guest, our weekly virtual happy hour with industry professionals. I'm Janki. I am the artistic director of Live and in Color. We are a not-for-profit theater company based both in New York and Connecticut. Our mission is to develop new plays and musicals that promote and celebrate diversity. We're so excited to have you with us today. Please check out our website, theatreincolor.org, and follow us on all our social media platforms to find out more about us. We have a lot of exciting new virtual programming coming up in the coming weeks, so keep an eye out for that, along with our weekly Be Our Guests. So now it's time to grab your cocktail and start leaving questions in the comments below. Please help me welcome an extraordinarily talented actress and one of my favorite people. She has been seen on Broadway in Beauty and the Beast, The Nance, The Ritz, The Full Monty, The Rose Tattoo, and of course, In the Heights and On Your Feet. Please welcome my dear friend, the incomparable Andréa Burns.
Hello.
Welcome. Hello, my love.
Thank you.
How are you?
I'm great. I'm enjoying my summer. I am out in the woods, as you can see, just having a little quiet moment.
Uh-huh.
All this. And
where are you?
I am in Maine. And we're in sort of a very isolated rural area here, just having some quiet family time out of the city before the summer, winds up. So it's been really nice. So you're like my first like electronic moment.
Well, thank you for joining us. It looks heavenly. And 5 months into this craziness, how are you doing? How are you holding up during this time?
We're good. I mean, I always look to like counting the blessings first. We're healthy, we're okay. Our loved ones are healthy, and we're doing the best that we can under the circumstances, and everything changes every day. So we're just learning every day and moving forward as usual,
What have you been doing with your time to, keep the creativity flowing during this?
Well, I have, first of all, I host Stars in the House on Mondays. I enjoy that very much because I get to produce and create the content for that, just like you do here, and pick my guests and decide what we're going to talk about, which I love. And a lot of teaching, a lot of private coaching, and then a lot of conversations about everything that we're learning about and sharing in the name of, social equality and racial justice in this country, and learning as much as I can, reading as much as I can, and then also sort of daring myself to speak up in conversations that can be difficult.
Absolutely. I mean, that's so wonderful. I want to go back and sort of start at the beginning. We have a long history together, and I feel like I have been so fortunate to watch your journey, in your career and in your life. And, we are so interconnected. You grew up in Miami.
Yes.
And talk a little bit about how you got introduced to the theater and musical theater.
Well, my father, first of all, for those of you Live and in Color fans, and, including myself and people who love Dev Janki, that he is like my brother. We started out in this business absolutely together. But before I got to you, Dev, I did grow up in Miami, and my dad is, it's like a Jewish man of a certain age. I think he was raised loving musicals. And so he introduced me to Broadway musicals, and that really meant like movie musicals. But I was a kid who loved to sing, and I knew from the very beginning that I wanted to be singing all the time. But the idea of actually telling stories while you were singing, musicals to me were just the most magical mode of expression. And so I just love them. And we were lucky enough to stop in New York City anytime we went to visit relatives in upstate New York every summer. So from a young age, I started to go see Broadway shows, and I just fell in love, and I would take the cast albums home and memorize them. And yeah, so I'm a theater geek from way back.
Yes, as was I.
Yeah.
In fact, I know you started out as a young person attending French Woods
Yeah.
Summer Theater Camp, which is, world famous now. And what's interesting is some of your friendships have lasted into your career.
Yes.
And can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, yes. I mean, that place was heaven on earth to me because, first of all, it looked like this, like where I am, this
Uh-huh.
beautiful rural environment. And yet everybody was either in ballet class or singing around pianos or playing cellos. And it was very cool to go to a camp where all the kids were into the same thing. It's really amazing. And so, something I always tell my students when I teach right now is when they're wondering where they're going to get their big break from, I always say, look to your left and look to your right, because it's the people that you're studying with now that are the future. They're the next generation of theater makers. And as was certainly true for me, I was there. I don't know if it was my first year or my second year. I was 11 years old, 12 years old. And I was cast in a production of Bye Bye Birdie as Mrs. McAfee, opposite a 13-year-old Jason Robert Brown.
Uh-huh.
And right. And we grew up those summers together. I watched him on his journey to being an artist, but really for me, it was just like, wow, that's Jason, the really intense guy who's always like playing piano, but he acted and he sang. And there were a lot of people during those years that were just at camp and really loving it, who now, are big people in the entertainment industry. Melissa Errico is a singer actress from there. Michael Cozarin, who is the conductor of all the Disney musicals, was there. David Stone, who directed me in You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown, when I was 11 years old, is the producer of Wicked and a million other things. So it was an incredible place to meet young, like-minded people, and really exciting to see, like 30 years later, how so many of us are doing it, and not just like on stage or producing, like agents, managers, screenwriters. It's been very cool.
One of my favorite stories is when we were roommates together first in New York when we were first starting out, and you coming home and saying, "Oh, there's this guy from summer camp who's writing this musical, and he wants me to do a reading. I don't know what it is." Cut to it being
Songs for a New World. Yes, which who would have known? But at that time, that's right. He had said to me, come, I'm working on some music, just come over and learn it. And we weren't besties at camp or anything, but we had a great mutual respect for one another. And we were both in New York at the same time. And I went over and learned the music. And I felt like there was such a kinship between, probably because we were around the same teachers, same influences. And so I was like, oh my God, I have to sing your music. And he was like, oh my God, you have to sing my music. Because, we gravitated towards the same things artistically. And and I worked on that until it became a demo, until it became a reading, until it became an off-Broadway show and a recording that changed our lives forever.
Oh, it's so beautiful. Speaking of shows that changed your life and shows you were with through its development, we have to talk about In the Heights. We actually first have a little clip of you from the show that we want to show. That I feel so fortunate to have gotten to see the development of that, the workshops and off Broadway, and then going to Broadway, and just see your glorious performance as Daniela. It was a cultural game changer for Broadway. Can you talk a little bit about what it was like to be part of that moment?
Yeah, and I agree with you. I think what was incredible about it, as far as being involved in the process in the beginning of it, was for so many of us who had worked on Latin-based musicals, we had not really had the experience of being in musicals written by Latin people, with Latin people on the creative team. And so that's what made it so truly like a homecoming. I always say, like, people who are developing a musical for the first time, like, we're the first audience, right? Before you get to know Danielle and Carla, we get to know Usnavi and go, oh my God, that's so cool. Look at Vanessa. Look at all these people. And we were falling in love with all of these people, not only as characters, but we were recognizing them. Right. Oh my God, that reminds me of my cousin. That's so my aunt. That's so my mother. So that was extraordinary. And also, it was probably a first to have so many Latin people in a room together, unless you were doing like West Side Story and it's the Sharks, right? You just don't see that. And I always say, like, there was a certain amount of representation of roles of Latin people you could play, especially for women. It was, Aldonza, Evita, Anita Maria. That was a track,
Yeah.
and wonderful roles, but again, not written by Latin people. And so that was really what made it so fresh and the whole show felt like an offering of love. Like, this is what I love about my family. This is what I love about my culture. Let me share it with you. And of course, that comes from the top, from Lynn. But we all felt that. And that was the big thrill of getting to share that together as a company.
No, that's so wonderful. And, definitely everyone who got to witness it had that experience as well. So thank you for creating that for us. Both of us came into this business with such an appreciation and admiration for the ones who came before us. And you have gotten to work with some of the greats in the business: Nathan Lane, Elaine Stritch, Al Prince, Stephen Sondheim, Gloria Estefan. In fact, you got to play Gloria Estefan's mother in the hit show On Your Feet. There you are, looking gorgeous.
Oh my God.
It's what's it like working and learning from people that you so admired, your icons, that just...
I think it's two parts, right? It's thrilling. First of all, you have to get over yourself, right? In the beginning, I'm just going like, I can't believe I'm in the room with this person. I just can't believe it. I can't believe it. I can't believe I got that. This is all my dreams. And, right? And it's actually not about them at all. It's all about you. Oh my God, I did it. I made it. Oh my God. Right. So yes, there's a great sense of, actually, I can't even say there's a great sense of accomplishment. Like, look at me, I did that. It's more like the Kendra and Ebb song. Like, it's a quiet thing. And like, you're like, I am working with Hal Prince right now. This is really happening. Oh my God. Oh my God. I know I wished for it so long, but I don't know that I ever expected to be in a room with Stephen Sondheim. This is real. So, you're like pinching yourself. And then, if you really lean in, you get to really appreciate like how these people got where they got, the work, how it's still important to them. Certainly some of these people I worked with, like at a later part of their lives. And, like, to see Stephen Sondheim still tortured over a lyric, like, I'm going to get something better, right? Where you're like, everything you say is gold. It's really cool to see. I remember taking an elevator ride with John Guare also and telling him, this new scene in this new musical we were working on, this new scene was really good. And he's like, oh, really? Do you think so? I'm so nervous about it. And I thought, oh my God, you're John Guare. But what it taught me was we're all artists and we're always trying to get better. Mm-hmm. That's what's so cool about it, that you could be the most experienced one, or you could be the youngest, the greenest one. And you really have the goal. You both have the same goal, which is to be the ultimate best that you can be. So it's cool. It's a cool leveler when you think about it that way.
Absolutely. I want to talk a little bit about, you've had an illustrious acting career, but now you are also an exceptional educator. We have, you teach at NYU and the Stella Adler Institute of Acting. Oh, there you are. The Manhattan School of Music, Montclair. How do you think, the current cultural and political climate is going to affect what material we teach, how we teach? I'm just curious your thoughts on that.
I was just having a fantastic conversation today with Michael McElroy, who is also an incredible educator at NYU. As the song says, we can never go back to before, right?
Yeah.
So the it's ripped wide open now, which is really cool. And for some of us who have always said, well, this is how this feels, or I don't want to rock the boat by saying XYZ, there's no boat to be rocked. Like, we're aware of what's going on, um, and that it needs to be discussed, and it needs to be examined. And, the big thing here, the big word I keep going back to is empathy, right? You can be empathic by just listening to your, your colleagues' stories and what they've been through, but also as artists, we are all transported. I mean, the reason so many people live in the Heights, like, it's not just Latin people who live in the Heights. Like, you live in the Heights, right?
Yeah.
You somehow invested in a grandmother in her bathrobe and slippers, and like certain things that are like the archetypes of Latin families, and the bodega and the hair, like, you got invested in that. I think that empathy in the arts, once we actually have the ability to understand what being in someone else's shoes is, I don't think it's not too far from there to feel our own humanity. It's not too much of a leap to make the human choice to say, I'm going to do the thing that's right. The problem is that we're all in these separate boxes of, I don't know your reality, you don't know my reality, I'm afraid to talk to you about your reality, I don't want to offend you, right? I think there's going to be a lot of conversations, but I think they're going to be different now. They're not just about diversity, quotes, inclusion. I think they're more about what are we all doing together as humans to make the world a better place, to make theater that looks like the world we know, to invite you into my culture to understand how I got here. I think when you talk about, I think there's been two paths up to now when you're talking about, diversity in college. So either we take, road A, which is, let's do In the Heights and Hairspray and Ragtime all the time, right? Or we say, which is my preference, like, let's do A Doll's House and Music Man and, now I can't, and Damn Yankees, and cast it as diversely as possible and see what happens, right? But I think there's an even bigger one now, which is like, and let's write our own stories. And hello, this is what you're doing, right? Yeah. With Live and in Color, this is what you're doing. You're actually really leading the way as far as giving a platform and a place for writers, BIPOCs, to write their stories, so that BIPOC actors are drawn to deliver those stories. They identify, they say, oh yes, that's my story. I don't need to be, in the 17th grungiest version of West Side Story, right? Because they're trying to put more ethnic people in it to grit it up or something, right? No, I actually need a story written by a person of color. If you want, like, I put that ask out to producers too. If you want something gritty and edgy or whatever it is, or you want to somehow have more BIPOCs represented, ask them to write your shows. Get behind a creative team that is diverse. They're going to attract the most authentic, vibrant, juicy cast. And those are going to be stories worth watching, instead of trying to, put a lot of these old-fashioned musicals into like a yoga position that just hasn't been invented yet.
It's so true. So true.
So I think it's all going to be, I think we're all learning, actually. What I want to say lastly is, I can't tell you what it's going to be like in school. I can just tell you that we're all going to be talking about it, and we're all going to be learning and trying to figure out new ways to further the conversation, but not as woke people, more as artists.
Which is so exciting, I think. Do you know what I mean? That we're getting to forge this new path, in our industry.
Yeah.
So just going back a little bit to West Side Story, which is, as we both know, it's the gift that keeps on giving. It's where we first met. I played Chino. Andrea played the Maria understudy in the world tour of West Side Story. West Side Story has, there we are.
I love this picture so much.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my God. God, if I only knew I had that kind of line then. I was so insecure.
You still got that.
Look how amazing that is.
Talk a little bit about your journey with West Side Story through your career, how it's continued to come back to you.
It's been incredible. And luckily, I happen to think it's a masterpiece and one of the great pieces of work. I really do. I love the piece so much. And I think it was created it's like the highest version of the form.
Yeah.
You know, as far as you're talking about Bernstein music, you're talking about Robbins choreography, you're talking about Arthur Lawrence and the way he was able to succinctly really, it's so hard to write a book of a musical. You can't just be like, and then I went to the store and then I did this, like in 5 lines, 12 lines, you have to get from song to song in a very real way. I feel like everyone's craftsmanship is at an all-time best in that show. So I happen to love it anyway. And then, yes, it was my first, sorry, I'm shaking my thing here. It was my first musical. I was non-equity. I went on the road. I met Dev and I was an understudy. It was my first time going on in role. So that was tremendously exciting. It was my first professional job. So many wonderful friendships, my first tour, all of that stuff. So then, and then later the tour went on for years. And so I would leave and I would do either a little regional job or I would come back to my very, very highly successful telemarketing job while I lived with Dev. And then a few months later, my replacement would leave or they say, you want to come out on the road and do the show again? So I went back and forth for a period of 3 years. That really would have been, I only went to college for 1 year. So the remaining 3 I spent at West Side U as we and so, and on that very last leg of West Side U, I met my husband, Peter Flynn, who played Tony. And now we have a son who's half jet, half shark.
Yes.
And then I came back to the States and because it wasn't under, when you worked in Europe, it wasn't under union jurisdiction, got my equity card, came back to the States. Oh, there's a West Side Story. Boom. I can get my equity card. Check. So I just kept doing all these different productions. Like when in doubt, there was always somebody doing West Side Story, right. And it took care of me for a great amount of time. And then even after I had long given up playing Maria, and then I had a baby, and then all of a sudden they called me to come play Maria at the Muni, and I was like, what do they say? A little long in the tooth for that. But it was the Muni, and everyone was like 2 football fields away, so I looked amazing, and I was amazing.
Of course you were.
Yeah, and that's when it's always just brought beautiful people into my life. I worked with Matthew Scott, who is a fantastic actor, who was 10 years younger than me at the time, which I was horrified by, but we became great friends. And then, and then I thought I set it down for a while, and lo and behold, 2019. All of a sudden, Steven Spielberg, I get this opportunity to play this role that never even existed before. And they called me. They're like, they want to talk to you about this part of West Side Story. I'm like, what part? Right? I'm 100. Not 100, but it's like, I'm not Anita. I'm not Maria. What's happening? And they had written this thing. And it's just so interesting. I actually do a number in my club act where I sing I Feel Pretty about singing it through the years as I get older and older and older. And I just can't believe that it actually came true, because at the end, I culminate the number by actually performing it as Maria, as Elaine Stritch. So like I essentially am an old lady singing I Feel Pretty. And the number I am in the movie as a grown adult is I Feel Pretty. So
so incredible.
Full circle, the joy of my life. It come out. Are you ready for this, Deb?
Yeah.
So when right now we're scheduled to come out this year, December 18th, 2020. Yeah. I'm not sure if that'll still happen, but in theaters. But if it comes out on time, it will be 30 years.
Wow! Since we opened in East Berlin, right after the wall came down. Correct. At the Staatsoper. There were, we made so many great friends during that time, and so many great connections. And there's actually someone here who wants to say hello, who was with us at the very beginning. Hello.
Hi.
It's Gregory Director, playwright, educator. Hello.
Hello. My heart is so full being with the two of you.
I feel the same. I did not see that coming. Look at
Oh,
you.
look at you.
Oh
Look
my
at him. You look so California, right?
Well, here I am. I'm in California. I'm living the life. This is my look.
You're gorgeous.
I just want to say one quick thing. Speaking of West Side and Andrea talking about the time and the years, and I will share that I have to this day a recurring dream that the three of us are on a bus pulling into some town in Germany, and it's almost half hour, and I'm thinking, like, I look at Dev and he's very young and vibrant in his chino costume, and I look at Andrea and she's young and vibrant and in the I Feel Pretty dress, and I'm like, when are they going to figure out that I'm like 82 years old and I can't do this? Like, what am I going to do? It's the quintessential actor nightmare dream. But the two of you are forever young in my dreams.
Oh,
you are forever young and beautiful. So obviously, Greg was our Bernardo out there, and I am actually now on screen in between my man of honor at my wedding and my best man at my wedding.
That's right.
These two gentlemen. So how lucky am I? Oh my God. And it all happened. That's right. Because it's 2020, guys, 30 years ago coming up. We will have been friends 30 years. I don't know how that happened, but
I know, right?
Yeah.
When's the last time you guys saw each other?
not that long ago. Yeah. We keep in close touch. We do keep in close touch. And we, when you were living in Vermont, I don't know if I went to you or you came to us last. I can't remember.
I think the last time we saw you was when you were recuperating. You were doing the rose tattoo and you were recuperating from a fall.
Yes.
This was quite a chapter.
Yes. But we rise.
Absolutely. Greg, I want to talk to you about, because you've recently moved from Vermont to California. You are a director and an educator, and you have such a huge commitment to diversity in theater. You've even developed classes on the topic for University of Vermont and University of Redlands now, where you're on faculty. Mm-hmm. What do you think some of the biggest challenges are that hinder diversity in American theater for audiences and on the stages? Talk a little bit about that. I know it's sort of a big topic, but.
Well, here's what I've been thinking about lately. And this is very, I think I'm going to approach it by saying the value of creating allies. Because, to speak in practical terms, if you look at conditions on Broadway and professional regional theaters across the country, in the non-for-profit sector, the boards are primarily made up of Anglo folks, and producers are primarily Anglo folks. And I think one practical way that we need to actually make change is to, foster relationships with allies who understand that nothing is going to really fundamentally change unless the complexion of the board changes and the complexion of the literal complexion of the artistic directors and producing directors in the theaters across America change. So, that's one thing I've been thinking about. In the institution, in higher education institution, it's particularly challenging because, we're, and this addresses kind of what Andrea was talking about around the notion of what materials are that we look at, how we create materials, and what materials we present our students to study, where there's value in the canon of traditional materials, but there's so much value in reflecting the complexion of America. So it's about creating new pieces. I've been thinking recently a lot about, what if I don't do X, Y, and Z, which I've always done? What if I get together with my students and we create in response to this particular historical moment as a kind of a pathway through education into social change? So that's kind of like my recent thoughts around it.
I mean, I've always been so inspired by the work you've been doing for so many years now. It's really kind of extraordinary, and so I'm excited to see what comes next for you. We actually have some audience questions that I would like to take. Let's see what Emma says. What is the biggest lesson you learned from being a teacher? Both of you. Andrea.
That you can always learn.
Yeah. I think
it's not just for the student, it's for you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
absolutely. Greg, were going to say something?
I think I would echo that. I think it's also, for me, what I've learned as an educator is that it's just like, a moment in acting. It's never what you think. The gold is in the moment. And that's one thing that I've continually learned as a teacher, where you go into the semester thinking, here's how way things are going to be. And you get in the moment. And if you open yourself to grace, you learn that in a particular moment, it's not what you think, and there is a possibility for transformation. And as Andrea said, it's not just transformation for the students, it's transformation for yourself as an educator, because every time we have one of those transformations, I think we become better at what we do. We become better educators, and we become better artists.
Absolutely. I think there's one more.
Yeah.
Sir, Bob says, what is it like being able to collaborate on projects with your family?
Well, look, we're doing it right now.
Totally, right?
It's wonderful. I think some people maybe don't love working with their family. I mean, there's my blood family and my chosen family, and yeah, I guess the only blood family person I have is Hudson. Is my parents. But I don't work with them. But I do work with my son. But my husband, these two extraordinary gentlemen on either side of me, like these are my chosen family, and I think we choose each other because we are passionate about the same things and are excited about the collaboration. We know that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts, right?
Mm-hmm.
In our goals.
Absolutely. Andrea always talks about this, that Live and in Color was basically created because I wanted to get my beautiful, talented, creative friends together and create. And I feel like we're doing that. Our mission at Live in Color is to connect diverse communities, to create new stage works. What does having a diverse working environment mean to both of you?
Andrea?
Well, that's not always the case.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's unusual now, but what it always means to me is more to learn. That's what I have to say. And that, it's great if it's people, if I'm working on an all Latin show, that's really cool. But then, when I work on Your Feet and In the Heights, we're not all half Venezuelan Jews like me, they're Latin, but they're from different countries, different cultures, different expressions of that Latinx existence, right? Nothing's a monolith, right? But it's more to learn. I mean, I have a crazy story about working at the Muni and being cast as Tup Tim, okay? In the spirit of like Rita Moreno being Tup Tim. And I arrived there and the whole cast was Asian. And I was uncomfortable, nervous, not sure how I felt about, if I even belonged there. And luckily, we had a lot of our mutual friends there, Orville Mendoza, Francis Jew, who were very, very generous with me and said, I guess because I was a person of color, they were like, come on into the water. But that was an unusual moment for me to be like the only other in the room, really. Yeah. And just looking around and realizing, wow, there's so much to learn here. There's so much I assume about process that has to do with the way I do it and people who look like me do it. Right. So for me, and especially because working environment is school for me, that's where I grow the most. Those are my teachers, the people that I work with. So that's what I would say. But it is not often enough the case.
Mm-hmm. So true.
That's just getting started, I think. Just hopefully more and more.
Mm-hmm. Well, hopefully we are at the beginning of that. We are out of time, sadly. I want to talk to both of you all night. But before we go, I want to say how proud I am of the work that Live It in Color does, that we foster inclusive environments, that create platforms that showcase underrepresented voices. I really believe the stories we tell change hearts and minds. If you can, please consider making a donation to us at theatreincolor.org to support our artists and the work we do. Also, be sure to tune in to be our guest next week when I will be talking to actor, producer, director, and writer Anjul Nigam, seen on television's Grey's Anatomy and the movie Growing Up Smith. It's going to be an amazing conversation. And finally, thank you to everyone who tuned in today. And thank you to my beautiful friends, Andrea and Gregory. Andrea, would you lead us in a little toasty toast to send us out this evening?
Okay. Here's to Live and in Color, which is a promise of the future and a reflection of our present. So let us share it. Let's no longer say it's for underrepresented voices. Let's just go out there and represent. So I invite everyone who is inspired tonight to give money or contact the organization and tell us your story and let your voice be heard, because we can't wait to hear it and we can't wait to tell it.
Cheers. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you next week.
Bye.
Seems like one long day. You're going through the motions. What does it matter? Does it matter anyway? Wishing things were different when the world is cold and gray. It's the same old song that's playing with the same old things to say. Someone should mix things up. Someone should take a chance. Someone should sing a new number. Someone should dance a new dance and change the story. Come on and change the scene. Change the beginning, the ending in between. It's time to change the story. It's time to change the tune. See how the future looks bright. Change on the horizon. Coming soon. And suddenly you're not lonely. Burned out from 9 to 5. Suddenly you have purpose. You feel alive. Here everyone is welcome. Come in love and dignity. 'Cause when we come together, that's when we're truly free. Come on and mix things up. Come on and take a chance. Come on and sing a new number.